Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving into a huge topic. You see it everywhere, in the news, at work, maybe even across your own dinner table. It's the so-called generation wars. We're told this story over and over, this simple narrative of conflict. But today, we're going to break that story down and find out what's really going on.
You know the drill, right? Boomers are out of touch. Gen X are all cynical slackers. Millennials, they're entitled job hoppers who only eat avocado toast. And Gen Z, well, they're just on TikTok canceling things. We are constantly being fed this idea that every generation is just fundamentally different, locked in this epic battle over everything. But is any of it actually true? Is there any hard evidence to back this up? Let's find out. So this idea of a generational clash, it's not just talk. It's a huge concern for businesses. I mean, look at this survey from way back in 2005. A majority of HR managers back then already believed they were seeing real conflict because of generational differences. And that perception, it's fueled a whole multi-billion-dollar industry of consultants who promised to solve this problem. And for decades, this has been a super hot topic. You see it in magazines, books, academic papers, all of them endlessly picking apart these so-called differences. The story is just so powerful and easy to sell. Each new generation is like a different species, and if you don't learn to manage them, your company is doomed.
But lately, a lot of researchers have started to push back. They're asking a really basic question. After all this time, all this money, and all this chatter, are these differences we talk about just a myth? Is there actually a there? Or have we all just been repeating some convenient and frankly pretty lazy stereotypes?
To find out, we can't just rely on what we think we know. We have to follow the evidence. So for our first stop, we're going to dive right into the hard data from the workplace. Let's see if these big generational divides actually show up when you put them under a microscope.
Okay, so one of the best recent deep dives on this comes from a 2020 study. They surveyed over 1,000 workers from different generations. And what makes this one so powerful is they didn't just look at the US. They also surveyed workers in Turkey. Now that's crucial, because if a trait is really generational, it should pop up everywhere, right? Not just in one country.
So this is the model the researchers used. Now, I know it looks a little complicated, but the main idea is actually super simple. They wanted to know if your generation, basically the year you were born, could actually predict how you are at work. Things like, are you happy with your job? Are you loyal? What's your work ethic like? They were trying to see if the label we put on you, Boomer, Gen X, Millennial, actually means anything real. So, what happened when they put these stereotypes to the test? This is where it gets really, really interesting. Let's just look at a few of them. The idea that boomers are more committed to their jobs? Only weakly supported. What about Gen X being more committed than millennials? Well, yeah, that showed up in the US, but completely rejected in Turkey. And that classic stereotype that Gen X works harder than millennials? Nope. Rejected. In both countries. Are you seeing a pattern here? It's a total mess of weak results and flat-out rejections.
And this is the bottom line. After they crunched all the numbers, the researchers' conclusion was crystal clear, and it flies right in the face of that whole generation wars story. The data just doesn't back it up. The few differences they did find were tiny, inconsistent, and they often disappeared when they looked at another culture, which kind of suggests they have very little to do with your generation at all. Okay, so if the data is so weak, why does this idea feel so true? Where in the world does it come from? Well, to understand that, we need to take a quick look back in time, because it turns out complaining about the younger generation is one of the oldest pastimes in human history.
I mean, does this sound familiar? It could be a comment from an online article posted yesterday, but it's attributed to Socrates from ancient Greece almost 2,500 years ago. The whole kids these days thing, saying they're lazy, disrespectful, it's not new. It's one of the most reliable traditions we have. And this just perfectly shows the pattern repeating itself. In the 90s, Gen X were the slackers. They were apathetic, cynical, impossible to manage. Fast forward 20 years, and guess what? The exact same things were being said about millennials. Every single generation gets a turn in the hot seat, criticized by their elders for the same stuff. It's just a predictable, endlessly repeating cycle.
So, if the data is weak and the complaints are ancient, what is actually causing the huge, rapid changes we see all around us? What's the real engine of change if it's not some, mystical difference between people born 10 years apart? Well, a lot of researchers think the answer isn't about generations at all. It's something called a period effect. That's when some massive force, like a war or a new technology, hits everyone living at that time all at once. And the biggest, most powerful period effect of our lifetime, you guessed it, it's the digital revolution. And to really get a grip on the sheer scale of this, we just need to look at a couple of numbers. As of early 2022, the world population was just shy of 8 billion people.
Now get this, out of those 8 billion people, over 5 billion of them are unique mobile phone users. That is more than 2/3 of all humanity connected by one device. This isn't a generational thing, this is a human thing. It has completely rewired how we all shop, talk, learn, and work, no matter when we were born.
This slide just drives that point home. This tech isn't just for young people, it's everywhere. It has created this unified digital world that affects everybody. It's changed our expectations for speed, for convenience, for information, for the entire population. We all now expect to find anything or buy anything instantly.
And hey, if you're thinking, well, older generations are being left behind, the data says the exact opposite. Social media use among people over 65 has quadrupled in just the last decade. And more than half of boomers now prefer to do their holiday shopping online. That so-called digital divide is shrinking fast. Technology is becoming a universal tool for everyone.
Okay, so let's recap where we are. The hard data for a generation war is shaky at best. The complaints, they're an ancient tradition. And the biggest changes we're seeing are driven by technology that affects all of us. So, given all that, what should we be focusing on instead of these tired, misleading labels?
The real takeaway from all this research is pretty simple. We have to start looking beyond the lazy stereotypes. It's so much more useful to think about someone's life stage. A 25-year-old starting a career is always going to have different priorities than a 55-year-old planning for retirement, whether they were born in 1950 or 2000. We need to understand how technology is changing things for everyone. And most importantly, just lead with empathy for the individual person in front of us, not the cartoon version in our heads. Those small differences we see aren't a war, they're just people being people.
And that leaves us with one last big question. These generational labels, they're a distraction. They're a marketing tool. They make us focus on these tiny, often imaginary differences instead of our huge shared challenges. So what if we just stopped? If we stopped wasting all this energy fighting a war that isn't even real, what could we actually build together? What problems could we solve if we realized we're all just people, living through the same wild, technological changes together?